Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Targeted Individual Program. For those of you who don't know what a targeted individual is, uh, we as TIs, targeted individuals, are victims of non consensual human experimentation. We are also a victim of a discrediting program known as a coercive persuasion program. Now, I'm going to explain this, some of this program, some of the tactics and techniques used in this program, basically the psychological aspect of this program. There's also the directed energy weapons part of this program, which is used to experiment, to punish, and to damage the physical and psychological state of the TI, or targeted individual. There's also the neuro remote neuromonitoring aspect of this program, in which I believe the majority of targeted individuals are microchipped for the purpose of remote neuromonitoring. Now, remote neuromonitoring is when you are implanted with a microchip inside your brain. And for those who may say, well, they will have to operate on you to do that, no, they don't. If you want to know how they can gain access to put a very tiny microchip in your brain, they do it through the nasal cavity, okay, which is a direct pathway to the human brain. So they don't have to operate on you. For those who think that just because TIs claim that they're microchip, that for remote neural monitoring, that they have to be operated on somewhere, or have cut open their head or something like that. It doesn't work like that. You can also be microchip just by the implantation of microchip at any region of your body. Okay, but for the purpose of remote neural monitoring, the microchip have to be inside the human brain. Okay, so let's move on. So there's a channel on YouTube, the Ken Baker Show, that that he has guests on there. Dr. Eric Kallstrom, who's an expert on directed energy weapons, as well as the targeted individual programs, and various psychological programs that he have understand, because he himself is a TI. And so I would advise all TIs to check out the Ken Baker Show. Also, I would advise TIs to go to this website. This is fatnet.org, and go to the section where it says what is mind control, and then you can click on the continuum of influence and persuasion. Is someone trying to ethically influence you? Mind control tactics, and how does mind control work? And also mind control and religion for the religious TIs. You will get a better understanding of the psychological program and how religion is used to influence, to control you psychologically. Okay, but what I want you guys to read is the mind control tactics, a short overview. Okay, and also look up what is classical conditioning. And classical conditioning was discovered by Ivan Pavlov, Okay, he's a Russian psychologist, and this is one of the psychological techniques that they use in conditioning targeted individuals. I'm strictly speaking of the psychological aspect here. Next, I want you to go and look up how does neuro-linguistic programming works and how effective is it. And I need you to really understand and read about neuro-linguistic programming. Okay, then go to do a search for a book called Mind Control Language Pattern, which is written by Dandelion Jones. Let me scroll up here. Here we go. So Mind Control Language Patterns by Dandelion Jones, which is a very good book that strictly speaks on neurolinguistic programming, mind control language, and how it's used. Now, there's a section in this book. Let me go to the table of contents, and where he talks about the language pattern that frightens psychologists. Also, dark NLP. Okay, let me see, where is dark NLP? Let's see. Okay. Well, I guess they rename some of the table of content from the last time. I actually have another PDF of this. But anyway, he talked about dark NLP. And dark NLP is what is mostly used on targeted individuals. So I want you guys to understand this. These are very important reading material that you as a TI have to read and understand. And you will see how it applies to your own targeting. Okay? Now remember, this program ultimately is about non-consensual human experimentation. So in order for them to try and get away with that, they have created a psychological program, a mind control program that is based off of coercive persuasion. And that is it used in order to silence you into not talking about what is being done to you. And they will use all sorts of tactics. So before you become overtly aware of your targeting, before that you were covertly targeted, right? So for instance, things that may happen or have happened before you become overtly aware of the targeting. For example, people always being rude to you when you give them no reason to, being put in a situation where they are hoping that the outcome will negatively impact you, or they know that the outcome, because they know what the outcome is. They've created the situation, they've created the environment, so they know exactly what the outcome is. And so then they will try to use those things to blackmail you into silence. So whether they may try to set you up for a crime, whether it be a physical crime, or try to set you up for a sexual crime in what is called the honey trap. Okay? They will do those things. They will try to physically set you up for a crime. For example, people constantly bumping into you to where you get angry and you may actually physically harm someone, right? And then going through the court process, they will try to convince you or influence you into becoming silent or remaining silent of your targeting and of the non-consensual experimentation that is being done to you in order for you to, let's say, not go to jail. Okay? These are the things that these people do. So, like in my targeting, and I've been a target for over 15 years, that's, when I became aware, possibly targeted even longer, maybe 20 plus years of not knowing that I was being targeted, and I was being set up to get to a point where I could be microchipped for remote neural monitoring, as well as being hit with directed energy weapons. Okay, so order again to silence me and to shut me up. So my targeting is a daily, 24/7, 365 days a year psychological targeting program, and that's a coercive persuasion program. And the use of psychological threats to physically harm me or to incarcerate me or to institutionalize me is something that is being constantly perpetuated by these perpetrators on a daily basis. And the perpetrators are your everyday persons or people, okay? People in law enforcement, police officers, those in private security jobs or agencies. And so the constant threat, the constant physical threat of being harmed, being incarcerated, being institutionalized, again, is constantly applied every day through the use of subliminal programming, okay, or neurolinguistic programming, dark NLP. So I'm not going to read all of this, but let's talk about tactic 7, which is the most important, because after they've done all of these other tactics, and this 1 through 7, and this is coercive mind control tactics, tactic 7 is repeated on a daily basis. See, the other tactics are conditioning phases, but tactic 7 is the intimidation phases, is the psychological threat of being harmed, physically, psychologically, financially, relationship-wise, societally. So tactic 7, intimidate the person with the force of group-sanctioned secular psychological threats. For example, it may be suggested or implied that failure to adopt the approved attitude, belief, or consequent behavior would lead to severe punishment or dire consequences such as physical and mental illness, the reappearance of prior physical illness, drug dependence, economic collapse, social failure, divorce, disintegration, failure to find a mate. So recently I get, not recently, but every day they do this, right? Recently I accepted a friend request from a coworker that I used to work with. Now, I have not worked at that job since 2010, I believe 2010, 2011. Now, before that, early on in my targeting, I kind of hang out with this guy a couple times, maybe twice. And I say couple, I mean twice, not more than twice. The second time I hanged out with him, we went to a party at a club, and he tried to offer me cocaine. And I told him, no, I don't do cocaine. And from that point on, I stopped hanging out with him. All right? I mean, yeah, we were co-workers, but I stopped hanging out with him, and I kept my distance from him. Because I knew that they were trying to get me hooked on drugs. Okay? And this is all part of, again, a coercive persuasion program. Because they need to do these things to you to negatively impact you. So therefore, when things goes wrong in your life, they can say, well, look, he was on drugs, and blah blah blah. Okay. So I knew from then, and how I knew this is from a website. I'm not sure if it's still up, but this person who was a TI, they didn't call themselves a TI back then, but they called it. I think he called it. He called the program Law Enforcement Setup and Trap Program, and he talked about this. And so when it happened to me, I knew what they were trying to do. Okay? And so, again, I never really hang out with him after that. So, like I said, I haven't worked at a company since 2010, 2011. And so, last weekend, I'm sorry, not last weekend, last Sunday or Monday, I get a friend request on Facebook. And it's this guy. His name was Victor Manaset. And so I'm like, wow, all these years, I've been friends with people on Facebook from that job since I left there. All these years, now this person decided that they're going to send me a friend request. Now, mind you, while all of this was happening, when he was sending me this friend request, I was being harassed by the police extensively. For instance, I took a cab to my house with my kids because my cousin had came over. He was visiting from Canada, and I was at the kids' mom's house, and we went downstairs to wait for the cab, and this police car going down the wrong way, okay, basically driving slowly, going down the wrong way. It didn't have any sirens on or nothing like that, okay, and I kind of like brushed it off. So went to my house, and then, I had to come back with the kids because my son had to go to school in the morning. So I came back in the cab, and again, I got out of the cab, and here goes the same type of police vehicle coming down the block the wrong way again, right? And this was at night. So at that point, I'm like, okay, that's not coincidence, okay? I'm being targeted by the police at this point. And so it was very interesting. So then today, I'm taking my son to school and my daughter to the babysitter. And the minute that I exit out the building, I saw an ambulance. Sirens on, coming up the block slowly. And then it stopped at the next building up. So I took my daughter to the store to get some candy because she wanted some candy for the day, and dropped off at the babysitter. And as my son and I were walking to his school, now the ambulance, no one came out of the ambulance. The paramedics did not come out of the ambulance. They just sat there. Now as I'm walking and approaching the ambulance, they drove off. So I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on here. Then, as I'm crossing the street, police car speeding now, just so that I can see them, because there were two of them in the police car, right? And they came to the stoplight, they had to stop. But they wanted to make sure that I saw them, that's why they drove up so fast. So anyway, continue walking, got to my son's school, and then there's another ambulance there with all the paramedics. There were 3 paramedics standing outside of the ambulance. There was no emergency now, no emergency at all. Now, as I began to approach close to them, they all jumped back into the ambulance, right? And then drove off. So I'm like, okay, I see a pattern that's going on here. Dropped them off in school on my way back. And they do this a lot. They use the, what do you call them? The, what do you call them? The crossing guards. Right, so they always use the crossing guards in my target, but there's one particular crossing guard that's on Church Avenue and Bedford. And whenever she sees me, right, usually I see her on my way to drop my son off from school, but on the way back, okay, they'll use her, and as soon as she sees me, she starts putting on her gloves. So today I'm walking back to the house, walking towards her. and she started putting on her green glove, and I'm like, okay. Now, this woman only does that when I'm walking back to the house. As soon as she sees me walking, I get, if she's on one side of the street, I'm on the other side, she will start putting her gloves on, right? Now, that is a conditioning method, a conditioning tactic and technique that they use. Because they've done it to me plenty of times, not just with this crossing guard, but when I was working, I get in the subway station. As soon as, they'll have a perp there. As soon as that perp see me, they'll put on their glove, right? And this was a continuous thing that they continue to do. And as I've always said, when things are being done in front of you repeatedly, it is not a coincidence. You're being conditioned. You're being psychologically conditioned. And that's why I talk about neurolinguistic programming and the techniques and the method of how they condition you using neurolinguistic program, as well as classical conditioning, right? Classical conditioning, okay? Which is all learning occur through interaction with the environment. The environment shapes behavior. So they put you in a situation where they're conditioning you to behave a certain way, right? And neurolinguistic programming is instilling fears and doubts within you, instilling negative behavior, negative traits within you, and if it's being used on you, you have no idea. You have no idea. Okay? Now, as it says here in how does neurolinguistic programming works and how it affects it, it says NLP might appear like magic or hypnosis. And it does. As a TI, especially if you're religious, you have this mystical, magical belief system. It will appear like what they're doing is magic, right? So you have to understand that. And so it is very, very important that you understand this, and I can't stress this enough. As a target, you have to learn about the psychological aspect of your target. Don't just start talking about you being hit with directed energy weapons. Okay, because that is a given. We know that. Okay, we know that we are microchip for remote neural monitoring. We know that. Okay, we know that they'll do anything and everything to hide what they're doing. We know that they will, give you false information. If you go to get an MRI, we know that they will try in every way to prevent you from getting an MRI to prove that you're a microchip or X-rays to prove that you have a foreign object within your body that they've put in there. We know that. I've experienced this time and time again. Okay? We know that they will hit you with directed energy weapons as a means of punishment if you don't go along with the conditioning. We know that. Okay? But your mind, once your mind goes, then that's it. Then you won't fight back, and they can experiment on you over and over again, and no one's going to believe you. Especially if you're rambling about a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense at all. That you have to explain things in a cohesive, logical manner. And you have to back it up with evidence. Alright? So that's why I said a lot of the times when I try to videotape, what's happening to me, if I can catch the police doing my targeting, that is a bonus. Right? Because then I have proof. When I'm videotaping the perps, your everyday persons, I try to explain what it is that they're doing, what my mind is thinking as they're targeting me, right? So I'm not talking about their demons or whatever, such and such, spiritual warfare, all that stuff. I'll leave that for the religious TIs. You guys can have that one. I'll stay far away from that. But when you talk about government experimenting on people, particularly the U.S. government, who have been over decades and decades developing directed energy weapons, developing weapons to control people's mind, developing weapons or technology to read an individual's mind. And they have to test these things out. Okay? And the best way to test these things out is in the general public area. Alright? Or within society. Because now they get real world feedback of their experiments. Okay? And we as TIs are the experimentees who are victims of this cruel, non-consensual experimentation and this discrediting psychological program that is meant to discredit and take away our credibility, to take away our rights, to take away our families, to take away our friends, to take away our status in society, to take away our financial resources, to basically have us commit suicide or end up homeless or incarcerated or institutionalized. Because that way they can hide a dirty little secret. Okay? So, dark NLP. Alright? Examples, and I'm going to go through the table of contents, the foundational mindset, more on the mindset of pervasive language patterns, taking mind control from the laboratory to the streets. That's important, because that's exactly what they have done. Okay? Providing and deleting an option, using your voice to control emotions, the parts given, creating another personality. Again, that is another big thing that they do, is try to create a split personality within the TI, or within the experimentee or the target. Right? Give them exactly what you want, taking people on a time travel adventure, weaseling into people's mind, the language pattern that frightens psychologists. When I talk about me, I'm talking about you. Compare things so that you always get what you want. Get into the core of any woman. And this is how they, especially if you're a female TIs, when you meet a perp, that they will weasel their way into your mind, because they've been given information, and men too, they've been given information about you that makes it seem like, oh my God, me and this person have so much in common. I can't believe how much in common me and this individual have. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, this must be fate. This must be destiny. No, it's not. Okay, you're a TI, and they've been given information about you to come into your life so they can wreak and cause havoc and destruction in your life. Okay, let me skip down a couple things there. Binding your success, choosing between two evils, still choosing evil. How to double the impact, seal the deal, and lock in the emotions you want. How to make people crazy, gaslighting. Yes, it talks about this. You know, that's why I say you guys have to read this book. You can find it online. Just Google Mind Control Language Pattern. The PDF is available online. You can download it, or you can read it online. Okay? Let's see here. How to open the door to a woman's heart. Let's skip this one. How to know the weakness of anyone. Hidden addiction. Lead others through confusion pattern, which is something that they do to TIs all the time. You know how many times I've been on so many shows, and a lot of TIs, they speak and they sound so confusing. That's because this is exactly what they're doing to them. Okay? So you have to understand this. And I can't stress enough. Now, you know, I post videos on YouTube, and some people are like, oh, you know, you have to ignore them. You have to ignore them. You can't ignore these people. They won't let you. And no matter how hard you try to ignore them, they're still there. So what are you going to do? If the bully is punching you in the face every single day, are you going to ignore the bully? Or are you going to fight back? You have to choose. And I, for one, is not going to be a punching bag. If you choose to be a punching bag, that's on you. What I say is that understand the psychological conditioning, understand the program, understand the tactics and the techniques. Understand that these people will not leave you alone. Understand the goal of this program is to experiment on you while the experimenters get away with it. While the perps on the street get away with psychologically harming you, get away with physically harming you by poisoning your food, spraying you with chemicals, okay, causing you to have mistrust, causing you to harden your heart and your mind so that you cannot have a loving, supportive relationship with anyone. This is what they are doing, okay? And as it says here in coercive mind control tactics, these tactics of psychological force are applied to such a severe degree that the individual capacity to make an informed or free choice become inhibited. Okay? So when you're thinking you're doing something because you want to do it, no, that's not the case. You're doing it because they've conditioned you. They want you to do it. Okay? They've taken that free choice, that free will that you have, and turned it into a controlled choice, a controlled will. And it may not happen all the time. Okay? But some of the times, yes, it does. Okay? So the victim becomes unable to make the normal, wise, and balanced decision which they would most likely or normally would have made had they not been unknowingly manipulated, right, by these coordinated technical processes. The cumulative effect of these processes can be an even more effective form of undue influence than pain. So as much pain as I may have with my back injury that they've caused through the vibrational technology that they were using on me, the bone conduction, you know, I was part of that early experiment in them using sound to transmit through your bones, okay, the vibration that was caused, that had my body, the lower half of my body violently shaken, right, is what caused my spinal injury. Okay? As well as the psychological injury that they have caused me. And the physical and psychological. Okay? So, it is more effective form of undue influence than pain, torture, drugs, or the use of physical force and physical and legal threats. So what they do, they use psychological threats. Psychological threats that, you know, hey, you know, many times they use the police to try to send me subliminal message about them arresting me being incarcerated, right? How many times I walk down the street and people, you know, with their slickness on their phone, like, oh yeah, girl, it's a crazy world. It's crazy. They're crazy. He's crazy. You know, that sort of thing when they speak. You know, the trying to shut you up, the doing this as they walk towards you, or this as they walk towards you, you know, in a repeated fashion. Because it's a conditioning method. Okay? The use of colors to induce negative emotions. Okay? If you don't understand all these things, you're at a severe disadvantage. And like I said, for those people who tell you to ignore it, don't listen to them. Don't listen to these people. Because they themselves are not ignoring it. Because they're talking about it. So if you're ignoring it, then don't talk about it. But if you're talking about it, that means you're not ignoring it. So stop telling other people to ignore what they're doing. It's particularly when they can't help it, because they've been conditioned. They've been brainwashed. They've been programmed. Okay? So, I'm going to end this by saying this, and I've read this so many times. By confusing, intimidating, and silencing their victim, those who profit from these systems evade exposure. And you see, and that is what is important for these people. They want to evade exposure and prosecution for what they are doing and what they have done. And so by you being silent, you are allowing them to evade exposure and prosecution. And I, for one, is not the type of person that would let anyone get away with what they have done, whether to me or anybody else. And they're constantly trying to silence me, constantly trying to send me subliminal about doing the same thing to my kids that they're doing to me in order to shut me up, constantly using the police to try and intimidate me. And this is a everyday basis. And I may not do a video every single day or week, but this is something that I go through on a daily basis. Okay? And they're constantly trying to deprive me of doing my show and talk show to expose the things that they're doing. So talk shows, particularly when I try to get on talk show, I can't. When I try to schedule to do a show, I can't. And then when I do am able to do a show, they'll send some, TI in there that sound totally way off, right? To try to discredit my show. Okay, or they'll send the racist, people on there to try to degrade me by calling me, or calling me on my personal phone, leaving messages of monkey sounds and songs about using the N-word and stuff like that. So I know that they fear me. I know that they fear of being exposed, and I know that they fear that I will expose them. And so they will try everything to silence me. And if you read Coercive Mind Control Tactics, you go to this website, fatnet.org, and you read this. If you're a TI, if this doesn't connect with you, then I have to seriously doubt that you may be a TI. And I hate to say that, because, we all get targeted in a lot of ways that are different. But when it comes to the psychological nature of the targeting, it's the same. It's the same for every single TI. It's the same tactics, the same mind control tricks, and coercive persuasion tactics. It's the same thing. Okay? So I'm going to end this video on that note, and I hope that you will take this information and it will help you in dealing and understanding the psychological nature of this program. And so you're better able to control your emotions, to control your actions, and even though at some point you may not be able to because of the manipulation, the mind control, the directed energy weapons, at least you're not going to fly off the handle every single time these people get in your face and try to target you. Because then that way they try to make you look crazy. Right? And by you flying off the handle, you're making yourself look crazy. Okay? So I will try to do another video once a week. Like I said, I'll try. But my life is, aside from being targeted, is pretty busy because I take care of my kids. And they're with me, 95% of the time. And so sometimes it's very difficult for me to do this video because, when I take my son to school and my daughter to the babysitter, I'm tired. I'm tired. And, I want to rest. And being a TI, rest is important. You got to get enough sleep. And sometimes I can't because I'm being awakened, multiple times during the night with noise campaigns, sirens, and car alarms going off, all sorts of stuff. So you have to take your rest seriously and get enough sleep. It's important. Okay.